Hi, my name's Nicola and welcome to another edition with My Inner Creative. Today we're going to be talking about budgets. So welcome to my bubble, and also please excuse my crazy bubble hair. Let's get started.
Hi guys, today we are going to be talking about our budgets during this crisis. For many of us throughout the world, potentially that this could be not only a crisis of health, but it could also be a crisis of finance. So we're going to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of how to make a crisis budget. Now, let's be very clear, I am no financial advisor, but both my parents happen to be in that space, so they've kind of taught me how to budget really well. So I'm going to go through my process of doing it, and we're going to kind of break it down into the things that you might need to look at or the things that you need to reassess to be able to make sure that you kind of have a good little bundle of money at the end of this so that you can make sure you're surviving and doing well. It's a tricky subject always to talk about, I think, because it's very sensitive for a lot of people. So for this particular illustration, I'm going to be using my Archer and Olive planner, and we're going to be going through ways to make extra money. We're going to be going through expenses and which expenses we can cut out, and some budget survival goals, which I've kind of put in, and I've got about 7 of those that we're going to be able to go through. I've also put in my budget planner and how that's going to look, and I also explain it as we go through. To make it easy and to make it understandable, I've used fake numbers. I'm not using real numbers in this particular instance, but I've used them on a percentage scale essentially to what I would usually earn to make it easier for me. What I am doing in the process is explaining how I manage kind of the cash flow and what I find is the best way to track it in my planner, and how you can do that as well. So hopefully you find this helpful. If you don't, pick and choose some of the stuff out of here. I'm sure there's tons of budgeting bullet journal and planner spreads you can follow. Mine, however, is just what I've picked up throughout time and life. So let's get started and let's get sharing how I do my budget.
Now, if you haven't already, feel free to download the printables and you can follow along with them right now. So we're going to start with my daily agenda here and open it up to the back page. I'm then going to grab the printables that I have previously printed out, and we're going to go through them one by one as we work through our crisis budget planner. On the first page, we are going to check in with ourselves, and I want you at this step to be really honest with yourself as to where you are right now in your budget planning. How are things going? How are you feeling about money? And kind of what do you have in your savings account? It's good to have a quick snapshot of where you stand and what you can do next. Now we move on to the nitty-gritty. Let's get really down and dirty about what our income is, our expenses, and let's break them down into specifics. So how much are you spending on those daily coffees? How much are you spending on craft supplies? How much are you actually spending on anything that may be a luxury item that you could potentially scale back at the moment? I found that during this lockdown, I haven't spent as much on petrol or parking. So I have made a really great, process in my budget where I don't have to put as much into those particular items. Now that we have a good idea around what are our fixed expenses, very much like rent or insurance, we can now kind of go through the not fixed expenses like hairdressing or nails or coffee or, the things that kind of change around like takeaways and entertainment. We're then going to work out how much money we actually have at the end of the month or the end of the week to actually work with. Now let's take a look at those pesky debts. Make sure you write down how much you owe, how much the debt was originally for, where it's from, and what the interest rate is. This will give you a good indication of where you might want to start by paying these off. It's really important to make sure that you've got a good grasp on how much you actually owe. On the next page here, we're now going to go through our monthly calendar and we're going to put down in the month of April which days we owe what. It could be that all the insurance comes out on the 26th, and it's good to be able to budget your cash flow to make sure that you have enough around the 26th to pay for all of your insurance. Now, as the last part of this printable, we have also created you a little weekly spread that you can print out and pop into your bullet journal if you don't have time to make something new. It covers off your budget and a whole bunch of other things. Now I'm going to move to my planner and I'm going to put the stuff that we've written down into my planner so that I've got it with me all the time. I'm going to start off by creating a budget survival guide, and I'm going to put down things that I'm going to do, goals that I would like to set to make sure that I am keeping on track with decreasing my debt and making sure that my budget is on track. Now that our budget is on track, try and be even more specific about your expenses. If you are having a coffee, write down how many coffees you're having in that week. If you get paid weekly or if you get paid monthly, try and make sure that your expenses meet up with your income. So if you are paid weekly, divide up your monthly expenses into a weekly cost, or if you get paid monthly, divide times your weekly expenses to become a monthly cost. So you have a good indication of how much money you have available to you after your income comes in and your expenses go out. Now I'm making a list of when my expenses are due so that I can group them together and make sure that I have enough cash flow on those particular days to make sure that I can pay for those expenses. There might be fixed expenses like rent, or it might be expenses like insurance, it could be my internet, my service providers, etc. So I want to group them together and make sure that all of those costs are coming out at similar times. Being able to make a little bit of extra cash at this time is really important. So here I'm going to write a list of ways that I personally can bring in a little bit of extra cash into my budget. This could be the difference between paying for an expense or not paying for an expense. This could be my weekly coffee even. So this list of things is going to help me work out where I can tap in first to make some extra cash while I'm in this crisis. Now that we have all of these ideas in one place, I'm going to head back into my journal and I'm going to make sure that I'm adding space in my journal that includes a reference to my budget. So I want to make sure that every week I am having a look at what that budget looks like. And I want to be reminded every day that I am working on my budget. So I'm going to add an extra column down the right-hand side of my page, and I'm going to add a tracker in there to make sure that I am keeping track of my budget all week, every week. I'm also going to make a really simple note of times where I'm making extra money. For example, this weekend I've got a garage sale and I'm selling additional stuff from my home so that I can make some extra cash into my income stream. Finally, we're going to talk cash flow. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a trickier and longer session to work through, but essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take our income and expenses and we're going to list them down the left-hand side of our page. We're then going to divide up the rest of the 2 pages or the open spread into a fortnightly or weekly process, depending on how often you get paid. We're then going to put in those expenses as per how they fall during the month. It could be that all your expenses are grouped together on the 26th, or it could be at the beginning of the month on the 10th, on the 1st, etc. So you're going to group them in so that you can physically see with your eyes your cash flow as you move through the next month. It's really great to put this sort of tracker at the beginning or the end of every one of your monthly spreads to make sure that you're still on track. It helps guide how you can spend your money, and you can also tuck your money away and pay off debts a lot faster if you know and you can see where that money is going. It might be that at the 23rd of every month you feel a little bit short on cash, and that could be because you haven't looked at your cash flow over the entire month. So therefore, if you're being paid on the 10th, you might be able to squirrel a little bit more money away so that you aren't caught short on the 23rd of the month. This really helps when you're planning out further or trying to work towards those bigger goals around saving or paying off debts. It's also a good idea to make a column for actual and budgeted. The actual column indicates how much money you've actually spent versus how much you budgeted. Put anything that you haven't spent back into savings or into paying off those debts. Finally, make it fun. You want to be able to make your page as fun as possible with some trackers and things that make it fun to save money or remember to pay off bills. You don't want budgeting to be a drag, even if it's stressful. You want it still to be a little bit of fun. We would love to hear your tips and tricks for budgeting. Leave the comment below, or you can find us at myinnercreative.com. We look forward to seeing you next time.